Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I am Barak Malkin, and joining me today are...
Ethan Lane Miller.
RDY.
Rabbi Leah Berkowitz.
Hey, welcome. Our guest for today's episode is Rabbi Leah Berkowitz. She is the spiritual leader of Congregation Kol Ami in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, and the immediate past president of the Women's Rabbinic Network. She is a graduate of Brandeis University and HUC-JIR in New York, where she and RDY worked together in the HUC-JIR soup kitchen. Leah is the author of two children's books, The World Needs Beautiful Things and Queen Vashti's Comfy Pants, as well as the middle grade Midrash collection, Maybe It Happened This Way, Bible Stories Reimagined, with co-author Erica Wovsaniker. Leah loves feminist superheroes, as well as reciting movie scripts and musical librettos in their entirety. In addition to being a performing arts geek, Leah is a word nerd. She has been on the now-defunct NPR quiz show Ask Me Another twice, winning once and coming in second in the Tournament of Champions. Her team also defeated RDY's team at a CCAR trivia night, and she will never stop gloating about it. Welcome, Rabbi Leah Berkowitz.
I forgot about that last part.
Was it like a head-to-head and like you remember the last question that you were able to win with?
I don't remember much about it, but I do know I talk a lot of smack.
Yeah, and I just remembered that I said something very impolite when I won. I was not a good winner.
I'm sure it was funny.
It was.
Well, welcome. We're very excited to have you.
I'm really excited to be here.
So go ahead, take us away. What is your lead-in topic for this episode?
So today we're going to be talking about Purim, which you might have guessed because I think I am currently most famous for Queen Vashti's Comfy Pants.
Wonderful.
And
this is a nice lead-in because Purim is just from when this episode comes out. It's just a couple of weeks away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Barak, did we plan that? That's amazing.
It's
What a coincidence.
Crazy coincidence.
Crazy coincidence. So Purim is this really wacky upside down holiday. And it's one of those things where there are traditions in your own house or in your own family that you don't realize are weird until you have company come over. And and as a lot of my friends are ministers and priests, I've invited them to join us for Purim, which I think is the most fun thing. And what gets weird about that is that they are actually familiar with the book of Esther because it's in the Bible, but they have no idea how we get from there to the costumes and the Purim Spiel and the triangle cookies. And I remember one of the first times that one of my minister friends pointed out that this was different. I was like, why? How do you do it? And then immediately realized, of course, they don't do it this way. And I actually was genuinely curious, like when you read the book of Esther, like what is that story about? And for them, it's really more of a generic story about the triumph of courage and faith over evil. And whereas for us, the book of Esther is so deeply ingrained in us as a story about Jewish survival. And our annual dramatic reading of it is basically the peak instance of our favorite tagline for holidays. They tried to kill us. We survived. Let's eat. Yeah. And in this case, we also add, let's get verschnickered. So on Purim, everything is upside down. It's the only day on the Jewish calendar when cross-dressing is halachically permitted. There are masks, there are costumes. We're allowed to scream and boo and hiss during a biblical reading and a religious service. We're supposed to get so drunk that we can't tell the difference between blessed is Mordecai or cursed is Haman. And if you're not a drinker, you don't have to get drunk. It's you could also probably get that way on sugar or coffee or whatever your substance of choice is. Another thing that made it a little different to hear about how it's done in a church is that when you look at the actual biblical story, even without all the fanfare, it is pretty wacky. You have the king is the drunken buffoon, which is, I guess, less wacky now than it has been in past years. And he can't reverse his own decree once he makes it, and he can't remember things from one day to the other. The queen is
classify and declassify with his mind.
There was a very interesting article a couple of years ago about how people were portraying in their Purim Spiels, they were portraying the one who shall not be named. They were portraying him
Voldemort
as Haman, and whereas actually he was closer to Ahasuerus because of all the things I just said. So the minority triumphs over the majority, and then the Jews end up in charge of everything. So like the whole story is ridiculous, and it's probably an early satire of some kind, and it's easily superimposed on whatever kind of tsuris we're facing in our own generation, hence the political snark I just gave. So Purim probably originated as a pagan festival, and the scholars are not clear on which one or exactly how it translated. But a lot of these festivals happened about this time of year when we're starting to get a little bit cabin fevery, and it's a way for us to get our sillies out as winter turns to spring. And a lot of these festivals involved costumes, indulgence in food and drink, giving gifts, playing pranks, and in some cases, a mock battle between deities, political parties, feuding families, or nations. And when I read that, I realized the closest thing we have to that today is probably team sports. It's this thing that's sort of a symbolic battle between two actual entities. Some people think that Mordecai comes from Marduk, the Babylonian god of war, and Esther comes from Ishtar, the ancient Near Eastern goddess of love. So every year we stage this symbolic battle when we put on a Purim Spiel, which is an over-the-top play meant to reenact the story of the book of Esther. And each year we have the opportunity to skewer Haman, the villain of the story, thought to have descended from Amalek, the ancient enemy of our people. And because we're commanded to blot out the name of Amalek, that's actually in the Bible, we boo loudly, stomp our feet, or shake groggers whenever Haman's name is mentioned. So he's actually the original "He Who Shall Not Be Named."
Because you're not supposed to name him. That's very funny.
Right. You're not supposed to be able to. You are supposed to name him, but you're not supposed to hear his name said. So his name is said. Right. You have to remember to forget him.
It's like that scene in Back to the Future where the lightning strikes. Like, I have to tell you about the future, and he just never hears him.
Right. Yeah.
The night that you go back. Sorry. Continue. I do that whenever the windows are rolled down and we're driving and it's super loud on the highway. I always say that to my wife.
But I did love the Back to the Future episode because I still think that Back to the Future should be part of. HUC has a class called Real Theology, real with 2 E's, where they discuss like the theological message of various movies. And the movies are all very like highbrow. And I'm like, no, Back to the Future has
They should listen to
theology.
This podcast. They should listen to this podcast.
Totally
folks, if you're interested, the Back to the Future episode was episode 14.
And Dr. Wendy Zierler, we would love to have you on.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I bet she would love to be on. So we're allowed to behave this way even during the official reading of the Megillah, of the scroll. And I actually have expanded it per my first supervising rabbi, Rabbi John Friedman. I now have sound effects for every major character in the Megillah, but that is not typical. And we can talk about that later.
Would you mind giving us a demonstration?
Okay, so, and actually when I was growing up, my rabbi, Meir Seligman, had the organist play a different song for each character. So I remember that Vashti was There Is Nothing Like a Dame from South Pacific, and Esther was A Pretty Girl Is Like a Melody, which I don't know what that's from. But anyway, so for me, it's a verbal sound effect. So every time you say Esther, it's go Esther, which is from a Godcast cartoon from years ago. Go Esther. Vashti is, you tell him, Vashti. The king, and this is from Rabbi Friedman, the king is meh. Mordecai
just for those not watching visually, she also gave a little nice like cartoon shrug when she said meh.
Meh. I realized we could also do the Yiddish feh. And then Mordecai is chai Mordecai, which is long live Mordecai. So, and I have signs that I hold up so people know which one to do. So this holiday continues to be relevant, in part because it's fun, and in part because it's relevant to the struggles we've had throughout history. It's incredibly cathartic to destroy a symbolic enemy year after year. It's a reminder of everything we've survived with our faith, our perseverance, our resourcefulness, and particularly on Purim, we remember that it's also because of our sense of humor. And thank you, RDY. A Pretty Girl is Like a Melody is an Irving Berlin song featured in Siegfried Follies. I'm now not living up to my saying I'm a musical theater nerd because I did not know that.
Did you just actually her on musical theater?
I did it in the chat to be polite to our guests.
I didn't know if that was like a cue for me to read it or if that was
That was me actuallying you, but no.
It's not an actually. I didn't know. It's fine.
Happy to help. My degree's in theater. My undergrad degree.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. So yeah. Oh, so I really am not gonna.
Okay,
yeah, I really can't
hardly remember any of it.
Okay. All right.
Except of course what you just mentioned. So.
I got that from Rabbi Google.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Then I feel, but it's funny because my dad, Zichrono Libracha, he used to ask me, rabbinic questions, and I would answer him, and he would say, "Oh, where did you find that?" And I would say, "I Googled it." And so he started calling me Rabbi Google because, and I'm like, "But you can't Google it. Like, I have to know where, like, what thing is real." Anyway, okay. So that is my setup. Do we have guesses, or I don't know if Barak asks for guesses with
No, you can ask for.
No, you're the
just
host.
Give what's a like a cat? Can we have like a
Can I take a shot in the dark?
Is it whoa, you don't want
I think David can take a shot in the dark.
This is kind of a wild one, and I'm kind of psychoanalyzing your intro a little in this guess. Because you said upside down a couple times. So Is it Stranger Things?
It is not.
Oh, that's super fun.
That's a great read.
Yeah, that would actually have been. That's actually a really good idea for next year.
So I have a guess and I have a reflection. The first one is one of my favorite memories from when I was working in a synagogue was when we had a church youth group come and visit us for Friday night Shabbat services. And it happened to be the Shabbat right before Purim. And so we did topsy-turvy Shabbat, and we had this big spinner. And we decided the order of the service by spinning the wheel. So it was all like in different orders and everything.
That's so fun.
I just thought, they picked a really interesting day to come learn about the Jews.
Yeah. A friend of mine.
I might steal it.
Please.
Yeah, I might too. And a friend of mine brought her, brought her now husband who was not Jewish to a Purim service. And he was like, that was fun. And she goes, yeah. And he goes, church isn't supposed to be fun.
Oh boy. My guess, similar to RDY, looking at the introduction and the things that you were talking about, is it about varying traditions and how things that might feel normal or regular to one group or one person can seem completely out of place and abnormal to another group?
Good pull.
So it can be about that. That's not specifically what it's about. I didn't actually make that connection myself, but we can make that connection.
Well, that's why I love these guessing, because for anybody listening, if you are curious and finding ways of connecting Purim to other things, that's what this guessing is for. Now you can find some other opportunity. If you like the Stranger Things or this customs you're not used to, feel free to run with that for your Purim sermon this year, rabbis or activities educators. Wait, can we get a charades Can we get a charades category?
It is a movie.
Movie.
Movie. Like a singular standalone movie.
It is a singular standalone movie. And I will accept also, just if you want to like narrow it down to an oeuvre, you can you can guess that.
Isn't oeuvre French for egg?
No, that's oof.
Oof. Okay.
I also said egg. That's so funny.
Oeuvre is like a body of work.
Got it. Oh, like hors d'oeuvre. Hors d'oeuvre.
Hors d'oeuvre. Yeah.
Hors d'oeuvre. It's spelled oeuvre.
Oh, sorry. You made me.
All these French words.
And me both snarf.
Snarf.
I love this, by the way. This is so much fun just being on this. Yeah.
So a movie about.
I don't like being stumped, but other than that, this is fun.
You mentioned a lot.
I really thought you were going to get it. Yeah.
Is it like the idea of a Purim Spiel itself, or is it Purim in general? Or
it's particularly about mocking a villain as a way of, as a central message of a film.
Mocking a villain as a
and satire,
like Wag the Dog, or
well, now we're at least in the movie category, so
so we're getting closer, folks.
What was the one where Robin Williams was the comedian running for president?
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Oh, that's a good pull. Death of Stalin.
No, that wasn't the Robin Williams.
No, I'm sorry. Comma. I wasn't guessing
that was his own guess.
Man of the Year was the Robin Williams one. Man of the Year.
Man of the Year. Yeah, that was the Robin Williams one. But
I take it neither of those were correct.
No.
Okay.
Mocking a villain.
Another thing to pay attention to from my intro is my love of musical theater.
Oh, and that's
musical theater mocking a villain.
Part in taste.
That is where we. Is it? It's not musical. Like I'm thinking like mocking.
It isn't a musical.
Oh, okay. Well, is it the Family Guy parody?
Is it the producers?
Of the Star Wars stuff? Oh,
it's the producers. Nice.
Oh, I'm so sad that I said my
Bring
thing
Time for Hitler.
Yes.
Oh, right, super fun.
When I was thinking about what is not camp about this talk, it was that I'm going to say Hitler and Nazi a couple of times. So for our sensitive readers, yes, it is the producers.
Look,
yes.
Unfortunately, Hitler and Nazis are relevant these days, so here we are.
Right, and I think it's less disrespectful to do this in the Purim context than to do this in an anti-Semitism context.
Good.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite movies. It is actually now a musical, but one of my strongly held opinions is that it should not have been made into a musical, because the funny thing about this movie is it's a parody of movie musicals that isn't a musical. I did, by the way, still pay an exorbitant amount of money to go see Nathan Lane in it. But I, in general, make people who, a condition of being friends with me is that you have to have seen the original producers so that I can rant about how it should never have been made into a musical.
So are we going to focus? You are full on 1967 producers, and you're Wilder. Like, nothing happened in 2005.
Yeah, I mean, it can be mentioned, but I'm not gonna be. It's not what this is about. But we can talk about it.
You're focusing on the Gene Wilder.
I am.
Producers.
I am.
Who was the guy? Who was with him with Gene Wilder?
Zero Mostel.
Oh,
Zero Mostel, who, by the way, was a Tony Award-winning actor for both Fiddler on the Roof and Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which are two shows that I've actually been in.
Because you've been in high school before.
Because I've what?
Because you've been in high school.
Right.
Before you've been in both of those shows.
And actually, Forum was when I was in college, and I got into rabbinical school the weekend that show went up.
That's awesome.
So I had this moment of, this is possibly the last time I'm going to be on stage, because now I'm going to be like a serious rabbi. And I was Domina, and I sang this song called Dirty Old Man. So it was really a lot of fun. And what I've realized, and this is like another reason this topic's really appropriate for me for Purim, is that that's where my musical theater geek comes out to play every year. And I always play Vashti, so I can have like a big ballad and then not do anything for the rest of the show. And we're actually doing Guys and Dolls this year, so that'll be fun.
Oh, very fun.
Okay, so just a quick bit on the producers. The 1967 Mel Brooks movie.
I love Mel Brooks so much. I'm so happy we have a Mel Brooks episode now.
I agree.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I thought maybe people would guess Mel Brooks because I said let's get verschnickered, which I think is from Robin Hood Men in Tights.
But the three of us are just like, that's
birds, there's trees. Yeah.
Let's bless
them all.
Until we get verschnickered. So has everybody seen this movie, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. I'm guessing a lot of your listeners have not. You now have a homework assignment. So
pause now, go watch the movie, and come back.
Yes. So Zero Mostel is a washed-up Broadway producer named Max Bialystock, and Gene Wilder is his very anxious accountant, Leo Bloom. And what happens is when discussing the financials of Bialystok's latest flop, the two men realize that you can make more money on a Broadway flop than you can on a hit because you can over fundraise and then not have to pay back any of your investors because the show flopped. They set out to make the biggest flop in Broadway history by hiring a ragtag team of Broadway failures to stage a musical called Springtime for Hitler. And I'm actually going to pause there since you have all seen the movie. Do you have favorite elements of this movie?
Well, I will say that this almost became my Purim Spiel this year.
Oh,
really?
wow.
But a script that my friend and colleague Rabbi Ben Sharf wrote called Springtime for Haman. And it's about a rabbi who wants to be fired from the congregation, so decides to do so by writing the worst Purim Spiel possible.
Oh my gosh.
But,
I love it.
And the only reason we decided not to do it is because I'm actually leaving this year, so we thought it would be a little too on the nose.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
I love that. I'm going to have to contact Ben and get that. Yeah. So other favorite moments of this?
I mean, it's I watched this with my mother, and it was the production of Springtime for Hitler that just had us. I mean, she'd seen it before, but like we were just rolling. It was so just phenomenal.
I'm a big fan of just Mel Brooks type of sideways humor, I'll call it. The fact that this whole premise is set up as this like foolish hero accidental thing, that so much of the dialogue is perfect. It sets it up where there's such a nice off balance of what they're hoping for and what actually comes out of the characters' mouths, and how it just kicks them in the butt. It's just, yeah. So I don't know if I have anything specific, because I just laugh a lot through the Mel Brooks films that I don't think I can pick one in this movie.
Yeah. And for me, it's the opening scene, which is, I think, one of the best and funniest scenes in the history of film. Again, strongly held opinion. And what's interesting, actually, is I did some research on the movie and the history of the movie. And Gene Wilder was actually not the first choice for this role, or at least he was not the first person hired. He might have been approached but among the people considered for this role were Peter Sellers and Dustin Hoffman, which is why I said close when you said Wag the Dog. So, and another fun thing I found out about this is, so the opening scene is the two of them meeting, and it's actually a very, very long scene. I didn't clock it, but it feels like it's 20 minutes, like it would never happen in a movie today. Because in this scene, they meet, they're going over the books, Bialystok's lamenting over his fall from stardom, and Gene Wilder's character has this epiphany that you can make more with a flop than a hit, but he's just saying it sort of theoretically. And then Max Bialystok basically pounces on him and is like, no, we have to do this. And Leo Bloom gets very nervous. And that's what becomes the really funny scene. So at one point he says, oh my gosh, I'm hysterical. And then Zero Mostel throws water in his face, goes, I'm wet and I'm hysterical. And he slaps him and he goes, I'm in pain and I'm wet and I'm still hysterical. And then brings out his security blanket and he's very frenetic in this scene. And what I found out when I was doing a little deep dive is that it was at the end of the day that they were shooting the scene, and Gene Wilder was like, I'm too tired, I can't do this. So Brooks gave him 2 Hershey bars and a cup of coffee, which I feel like, given that it was 1967, is the cheapest way to get somebody up to the level that you need him to be. And the scene was shot in just 2 takes. And there's actually a part where Zero Mostel is standing over Gene Wilder, and he goes, you're going to jump on me and squish out my insides. And one of the reasons that was so powerful was because Zero Mostel was quite a large man, and Gene Wilder was genuinely afraid that he was going to jump on him and squish out his insides. So yeah, a couple little bits of trivia. This film was almost not released. And in fact, which for obvious reasons, the actor Peter Sellers, who had been considered for the role of Leo Bloom, saw it at a private screening and then sort of lobbied for its release. According to Mel Brooks, Jewish organizations at the beginning were outraged. They didn't get the joke. Within a few months of the movie's release, Brooks received angry letters from, in his estimation, every rabbi in New York. He took these very seriously. I wrote a reply to every single letter I got explaining you can't get on a soapbox with Hitler. You've got to ridicule him, which leads us to another funny thing about Springtime for Hitler is what ends up being funny about the show is that they hire this beatnik actor to play Hitler, and he plays it as a hippie. And he's always going, come on, baby, don't give me a hard time, baby. And then the playwright, who's this sort of unhinged former Nazi, though I don't think he actually ever says that. This unhinged gentleman like storms the stage and goes, the Fuhrer never said baby. What is it with this baby? So the musical opens with this number, Springtime for Hitler, and which is actually, there are a few songs in it, but this is like really one of the only big musical numbers. And because of the Springtime for Hitler number, this film was banned in Germany.
Oh,
because there are laws against having against having any Nazi propaganda.
Oh, wow.
So it couldn't be screened in Germany until it was screened as part of a Jewish film festival years later. But it was just funny to think that like the reaction it had in America, obviously, but then that it was actually banned in Germany. All right, so I have some questions. We heard about this negative reception from rabbis in the community. So imagine you all as Jewish professionals and engaged Jewish people, you're in the audience for this movie in 1967 as a Jewish community leader, or you've been a person who maybe hasn't seen it because you're a Jewish community leader and you've heard it's vulgar. Where are you on the scale from delighted to horrified? And also keep in mind, like the first time I saw this movie was probably 30 years after it came out. And when it came out, we were within 25 years of the events that they're mocking. So it's still kind of early to be making those kinds of jokes, not that it's ever
fresh. That's part of what makes this such a good question is like envisioning seeing it today for the first time when I have a much more chill reaction. And, in our D&D episode, one of the things that I said was that we have a problem of trying to find anti-Semitism when it isn't there.
Mm.
And one of the things about making fun of Hitler is that it can feel anti-Semitic when in actuality, it's, I love the Mel Brooks quote that you said that, the only way to deal with him is to make fun of him, which is also a very Jewish response to tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how I would react today versus how I would react if I existed in 1967, we know that comedy equals tragedy plus time.
Mm.
So the question is, how much time? When is it #too soon? And when is it okay?
Yeah.
I also think I think there was an episode I talked about this, but I really have this struggle in my head. I think that comedians and comedy, they should be able to joke about anything that's relative to them in some way, or just anything, and as long as it's tasteful in some way. And yet I still have this like really irksome side when I hear any sort of Holocaust joke like that. For some reason is my barrier, but he's not really joking about the Holocaust in this case. He is just making fun of Hitler. And there's no Holocaust jokes. It's just the Hitler is a foolish person. Like he just makes him out to be an idiot. Well, or at least the actor does.
Yeah.
And the movie is not portraying anything else regarding the Holocaust. It's just, let's make a Holocaust show so that it would fail. But there's nothing else. So I think I would be okay with it. But I think Artie makes a good point of like, how fresh is it for me if I'm back in 1967 and I have relatives who were part of the Kindertransport and had died in the Holocaust? I don't know. I don't know where I would be at that point.
And you make a good point, because I think that's actually the reason that they could get away with this at all is because the whole concept is we're making the most offensive musical possible so that people will walk out. And after the Springtime for Hitler number, they show the audience, and the audience is just completely frozen deer in headlights because they're so shocked and they're all about to leave. And then the actor playing Hitler comes on and he's hilarious, and they stay, and the plan fails.
And they've got a hit.
Yeah.
And they've got a hit. Yeah. So I think that's also part of it, is that in that context, we're making fun of people who would do something like this. And I think another important thing in terms of comedy, like that comedy equals tragedy plus time, is that there's also this concept of punching up versus punching down. And I think it's a very important concept in comedy, since we're having so many conversations about what's appropriate and who gets to make what joke. A lot of it is about when you're making fun of someone who has control over you or who has persecuted you, that's punching up. If you're making fun of the little guy, that's punching down, and that's not okay. And I was wondering, because I was once in a humor writing class, and we were trying to talk about this, whether there's anything that goes too far. And somebody did say, jokes about the Holocaust, that's taking it too far. And as the only Jewish person in the room, I was like, I bet there were people in that historical era. I bet there were Jewish people making jokes about it. And we know that in a lot of the ghettos and concentration camps, there were orchestras, there were plays, there were women writing cookbooks in Theresienstadt. So there were probably also people making jokes. And I don't know that we have any record of that. But again, that would have been the ultimate punching up, is that we're in this horrible situation. What can we make jokes about?
I wonder when, I don't know if anybody knows, when the first spiel was done. Granted, not as close as Holocaust and the first producers. But when the first time somebody's like, let's make fun of this tragedy and Haman, because none of our other holidays do it. None of them. You could correct me. I don't know of another time that we go, ha ha ha, that person who killed all of the Jews. Right? Like, I
mean, a modern day Passover Seder will have some of that, but not the traditional Haggadah.
Well, like similar to a spiel, though? Like, what sense of the Seder does...
I mean, we have parody songs now in our Seder, but that's our Seder. That's not everybody.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
I
don't know if the first spiels would have been accepted
years ago, and the history of Purim Spiels goes to Ashkenaz in the 1500s.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, relatively new, but 500 years old is not that new. But just the idea of a spiel, like that's probably also what helped create Yiddish theater. And
I wonder the reception of those first spiels in the 1500s, how.
And also the impetus, because if you're thinking about, so there's also some talk about how now in modern day Purim Spiel, sometimes we're commemorating things that are happening in our own recent history. I wonder if the first Purim Spiels were in response to some kind of persecution that was happening in the neighborhood. The odds are pretty good.
Unfortunately, knowing Jewish history, yes, odds are very good. I think maybe we're taking this fact for granted, but it's worth naming that we would probably feel very differently if it was not Mel Brooks, and if it was not someone who was Jewish who had done this. We probably...
Yeah, like if it was Mel Gibson, it would be a very different feeling.
Extremely.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Extremely.
Right.
Very different Mels.
Very different Mels.
And so this makes me think of Sacha Baron Cohen and how the song "Throw the Jew Down the Well" would probably be received very differently if it was not done by a Jewish comedian in a character.
And
he did, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that also, it's funny because I do want to just take a moment to dedicate this episode to my dad, because he is the one who introduced me to this movie. But he also, I believe, walked out of, I think it might have been Bruno, which is another Sacha Baron Cohen movie, but he absolutely walked out of a Sacha Baron Cohen movie because he was offended. But meanwhile, this was one of his favorite movies.
Will you say your dad's name, please?
Oh, David Berkowitz.
David Berkowitz.
Yes. May his memory be a blessing. Yeah. So this was one of his favorite movies, but he found the Sacha Baron Cohen stuff very offensive. And I was always going right on the edge with Sacha Baron Cohen because it would be really, really funny. And they'd be like, oh, no, that's too far. That would be a really interesting thing to talk about because he filmed his last movie during the pandemic and he actually ended up having to stay with people as Borat.
Yeah, I saw that one.
During a lockdown. So, right. So it's different because it's Mel Brooks. It's, I can make jokes about this because it happened to my people, but you can't make jokes about this. And I think that also is tied to punching up and punching down.
Yeah. It's also a concept I take issue with because I think it's all about how it's done. And I think the producers does it very, very well. But the idea of I can make fun of it because I'm a part of that group, if you're there to defend it, then sure. But if you leave a product out in the wild for people to view and you are aware that you're part of that group, but maybe future viewers are not, it's a way of giving permission to make that kind of joke that is definitely crossing the line for me.
Yeah. And actually, a couple of years ago, I was watching the Oscars and they brought out Seth MacFarlane's Ted, like the vulgar teddy bear. And he made what in the room was like an insider joke about Jews in Hollywood and Jews controlling Hollywood. But A, Seth MacFarlane, as far as I know, is not Jewish. And B, that was being broadcast to millions of people who did not understand the context of that joke in the way that the people in the room would. And I'm sure even some people in the room were offended. So I think it does depend on who's making the joke and in what context. And
MacFarlane also offended the entire world in some form at that evening.
That's also true. In fact, I actually stopped watching Family Guy for a lot of reasons, but the thing that made me like, I'm never watching the show again, was they actually had a Holocaust episode and I turned it off in the middle. So that apparently was my line. And an interesting thing that you were saying about like who's going to see it and who's going to know the context. So when I started writing Purim Spiels, I was really proud of them and we would be videoing them sometimes and then realizing like, oh, you can't just post this on YouTube because the funniest song would usually be whatever Haman was doing. And one year we did a Queen themed Purim Spiel. And so another one, Bites the Dust, was Another Jew I Will Crush. And it was really funny. We took a video of it, but then we couldn't post it anywhere because if you take that out of context, it could be used in the wrong way. So the context absolutely matters. And that actually leads me to my next question, which I think will be my last question. What is the best Haman treatment you've experienced in a Purim Spiel? And it can be one you've written and performed in or one you've seen.
Can I just ask, how many of us have written Purim Spiels?
Me.
Okay, so me, Brock, RDY, and Leah. Ethan, get on that.
And I've performed in many.
So you're familiar with the genre.
Just to put my street cred out there. I have not written, but I have starred, and I use that word very intentionally.
Have you ever been Haman in a Purim Spiel? Yeah,
multiple times.
So you're absolutely qualified to answer this question. Then
he's the most fun to be.
I think he's the clearest character, I think, for everybody because you're not supposed to like him, so you play the villain, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else is, I think, can be confusing of like, with the sense of what the Purim Spiel is. Esther's the hero, but is she the one who's a little hesitant, or is she more forward in this one? Is Vashti leaving because she's a proud person, or is she leaving because she's disgusted, or whatever it is? Or is Mordecai an anxious uncle? Is he like a fun uncle? Like every year, everything changes except for Haman. Haman is the tried and true, the villain, no doubt.
Yes, and in fact, I'm going to shout out my high school theater director, Henry Fetterman, also Zichrono Livracha. He always said it was the most fun to play the villain.
Totally.
And I realized, I was in high school anyway, I was a soprano, so I was always playing like these sweet, innocent, romantic characters. And then in college, just by virtue of my being taller than most Jewish women at Brandeis, I guess, I was always being cast as old women, and it was so much more fun. And I think Haman speaks to that too, because you want to take it over the top. I mean, the whole show's over the top.
Haman also isn't evil. It's like the mustache twirly sort of evil. So it's great.
Yeah.
Two Haman portrayals come to mind. One, and oh man, if my parents listen to this one, they're going to be like, oh, this is so Ethan. They both happen to be the times that I portrayed Haman.
Darth Vader.
No,
okay.
I was not in that one. Well, I was not Haman for that one. It was Harry Potter, and he was Quirrell with like the turban on. And so one of them was a duet between Haman and Voldemort. There's someone else playing Voldemort. That was really fun.
So Haman wasn't Voldemort.
So no, Voldemort was on the back of Haman's head.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's super fun.
I think my absolute favorite was High School Musical, where it was Sharp Haman, and I got to play Ryan. And so I had a lovely duet with Sharp Haman, and it was a lot of fun.
That's wonderful.
I think for me, it was back in Miami, and this is actually one that I wrote. I wrote a Star Wars spiel, and it was Darth Vader. That was Haman, and it was played by Rabbi Alan Litwack. And my favorite moment was the entrance when Vader came in for the first time. Instead of doing Star Wars music, we played AC/DC's Back in Black. It was so much fun just watching him walk down the aisle from the back of the room, strutting to Back in Black. This guy who, as a person, I don't think he had ever before listened to AC/DC, but as someone who was dedicated to the spiel, he was phenomenal.
That's awesome. We're very fortunate that we have a regular Haman. Same woman plays Haman every year, Fran Sirkin. If you're listening, you're wonderful. And she actually got this job because she had to sub for somebody who had the flu, and she did like at the last minute, and she did such a good job that we have her be Haman every year. And so one year we did a Dolly Parton themed Purim Spiel, which was actually the day before everything shut down for COVID. So basically we were aware it was happening, but it hadn't happened yet. So we actually, her big number was to Jolene, but it was bow down, bow down, bow down, bow down. And then that also ended up being part of our evening in that people were telling you that you have to wash your hands for the length of Jolene if you to be safe. So yeah, so that was one of my favorites. And then actually my first Purim Spiel, which was Muppet themed.
Oh, that's one I was going to talk. Go ahead.
I've done one.
Yeah. I was the Swedish chef as the narrator. I was the Swedish chef. And then at the end, we made Haman into a Hamantaschen.
Tangential.
So wrapped him in a blanket.
The Swedish chef is unique among Muppets for one feature.
I know why. Can I say? Because he has human hands.
Yeah, human hands.
Oh, nice trivia.
He's not the only one.
And the sleeves are rigged to keep his hands partially covered.
That was such a good detail, RDY.
There's more Muppets than just the Swedish chef who use their hands.
No.
Yes,
he
has actual
hands.
Human hands.
Doesn't Dr. Teeth?
Dr. Teeth has 5 fingers, but he has Muppet hands.
That is phenomenal. RDY, have you and Leah ever decided to compete in trivia before? I feel like that'd be such an interesting battle to watch.
Speaking of too soon, Ethan.
Oh, sorry.
I'm also so glad we were able to work Muppets into that because that's another one of my geekdoms. So I really don't know if Dr. Teeth has human hands, so I'm gonna have to go look that up.
Dr. Teeth has green hands with rings on them, but he has 5 fingers.
Even and the other ones have 4 fingers.
Ralph the dog, who also plays piano, has 4 fingers.
Beaker
has Muppet hands.
This is great. I have to go and check this out.
Yeah.
So I will say I don't know if I have a favorite Haman one. So the ones that I write for congregations across the country, I don't focus on Haman because I try to make every character a little interesting. But the Muppet one I enjoyed because we'd Gonzo and Fozzie Chai and all these people and Statler and Waldorf commenting on the entire spiel off to the side.
I would have made Ahasuerus Fozzie.
Ahasuerus, hold on. It was King Kermit Saris.
Okay.
And
allow it.
Miss Pigster. That was super fun to have Statler and Waldorf picking on him. I will say I think my favorite Haman song that I wrote, it was recent for my Encanto themed one I called it Incognito. And Haman.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, that's a really good wordplay on Esther.
Yeah.
And
because Esther means hidden, if you didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's super fun. So Haman's song was sung to this tune of Surface Pressure, which
love that song.
Just like the attitude that she has in the song of being super strong and having to hold everything up, fit Haman's personality for the song. was so fun. That was a fun one. I really enjoyed that. But I also want to share, I think my favorite Spiel song that I wrote was for my Frozen Kishkas, my Frozen themed one. And I had thrown in a character of this Haman who was playing the role of Olaf, the enchanted thing. So he's an enchanted one, and he sings a song about wanting to be at Oneg and doing what all cookies do at Oneg, which is get eaten. But that's and I always remember that was wonderful. Yeah.
Can I also give myself a little nail
go right ahead.
polish on the shoulder? There was a Purim Spiel that I wrote recently, and I played Mordechai, but it was a Grateful Dead themed Purim Spiel. So it was a very I did the Michael Chang voice, man, and I happened to have longer hair at the time, but I usually kept it in a really stupid looking man bun. But that night, I let my hair down and I kind of wet it up so it got, Jewishy curly, kind of like Ethan Lane Miller's, but a little thinner. And I had it on either side of my head, and I had let my beard grow out long, and I was just totally not in my own body. And someone asked me later why I wasn't in the Purim Spiel.
I love it.
That is a success story.
I want to, while we're on this Purim Spiel conversation, I want to shout out my current congregation, Temple Ner Tamid in Bloomfield, because I have never, ever seen such a production. And it's usually late at night, an adult more themed Purim Spiel, and it is standing room only. And the first year I saw it, they did Spiel Night Live, and they had a full band. They had the light bulb background on the stage. Nobody held their books, and it's fully choreographed, fully memorized.
Wow.
It is. They had a spotlight in the back. It is. I've never seen this kind of production. They practice.
I will get strung up if I don't say at CBT we do the same thing. We don't have lights and sound because our building doesn't have it, but we do rehearsals, and we start rehearsing the first Sunday of January.
Oh, yeah,
and we rehearse through to Purim.
It's so nuts. I think, and I don't know where to feel it because I walked in, I was so impressed. But all the spiels I've been to have been people holding their books and stumbling their lines, and part of that makes the fun of it's not a thing. And I was I don't know how to feel about this. This is incredible, but shouldn't this be poorly done if we're making fun of it?
And let me shout out the not poorly done, because we have an amazing Purim Spiel, but we do it in the much more low key way. So we are on book. We do have rehearsals. I actually at one point went to some place where they didn't rehearse at all. They just gave people the lyrics and hoped that they would figure it out. But yeah, there is something fun about that. I did just want to shout out one more thing.
Yeah.
One year we did Sesame Street, different from the Muppets, so I think I did use one of the songs again. We did Sesame Street, and of course, Haman was Oscar the Grouch, and one of the other actors had brought her toddler, and we had to test whether he was scary enough or too scary when he was everybody's trash. And she thought it was the funniest thing in the world. She was collapsing in giggles. And it was one year I didn't play Vashti. I was Ahasuerus as Cookie Monster. And my parents were coming up to visit, and my parents both asked if they could help. And I, at the last minute, said to my dad, would you mind dressing up like the Count? And just anytime there's a number in the Megillah, just go, And he hammed.
That's so good.
He hammed this up. And my dad was very funny, but he was also usually pretty quiet. And he hammed this up. It was the best part of the spiel. And then at one point towards the end, when Ahasuerus goes, I will give you up to half my kingdom, my dad goes, oh, I don't do fractions.
Oh, that's so fantastic. That's great. Leah, this has been awesome. Do you have anything? Do you have a wrap up for us? Anything you want to close out with?
Just that it is really important to be able to laugh at ourselves. And it's really important to be able to keep a sense of humor even when things are difficult.
Yeah, I love that message. That's great.
Oh,
totally agree. Awesome. So nice having you.
Humor is a survival skill.
Yes, humor is a survival skill. Yeah,
it really is.
This is so fun. Do you have anything you want to shout out while in perpetuity while we're here?
Yes. So a great book to read on Purim is Queen Vashti's Comfy Pants, which is through Apples and Honey Press. I also have a new book of middle grade midrash that just came out called Maybe It Happened This Way with my co-author, Erica Wasaneker, who's also from West Orange, by the way. And
really?
Yeah, that is also through Apples and Honey. And you can find out more about me and my books and me as a rabbi at leahrachelberkowitz.com.
And how do people find you on social media?
Oh, at Rabbi LRB.
Awesome.
We like initials.
We do like initials. I didn't have a good like Rashi name like Ralbag. Ralbag is not great.
And taken.
Oh no, I think it was Ralbad because I was Bat David. Yeah, so Ralbad was not a good one.
I have one of my mentors lives up in Maine, Rabbi Jared Sachs, and his license plate is Rev Lobster.
Oh man.
That's
so good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it.
Nice. Oh, that's amazing.
Great. Awesome. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And I can't figure out how this could happen. I was so careful. I picked the wrong podcast, the wrong title, the wrong co-hosts. Where did we go right?
I'm looking at the smash part and I'm like, well, I don't have any bad words in there, but there are definitely some what we would call not camp words in there.